Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. My name is Kyle King, and welcome to our next webinar in our 2021 series with Capacity Building International and the International Emergency Management Society. So just giving it another minute or so, just another few seconds for people to come in. All right, so getting started again in our 2021 webinar series, International Models in Emergency Management up, and it says Czech Republic. Sorry about that. All right, but today is going to be with Finland. So we have a really great presentation today. I'm really looking forward to it because there's some really interesting information about some of the history of Finland and how they developed their emergency management and civil protection systems, and it's really going to be great. But today, I just want to let you know, so we are also up to 36 nations in our webinar program that have been registered with us, and so we're really growing with that, and that's really great. So if you want to spread the word about the webinar series and let other people know what we're doing, that would be great. And also with the Q&A, we typically take the Q&As toward the end. So if you do have questions, go ahead and put them in the Q&A section there, and then you'll find that down at the bottom. And when you want to ask a question, and we will go ahead and write that down and ask our presenters towards the end of the presentation. Now, if you want to stay in touch with the event, there are a couple ways to do that. Of course, through the Teams website, you can go there and find out more information, but we also created a LinkedIn group so that you can attend that and so that you'd be able to actually get notifications inside social media and your LinkedIn profile. And you'll just get a typical notification like you see there on the right-hand side when we post news and announcements about the webinar series itself. This was just one of the easiest ways that we could find where we could just not bombard people with a lot of emails and things like that, but also it's kind of embedded within LinkedIn. It's a little bit problematic, to be honest, because it's not entirely engineered to do it the way we want with a series throughout the entire year, but it is functional. We do have it integrated into LinkedIn. We can ask questions, post materials, and we do post recordings as well as some of the slide presentations that we get from the guest speakers. So if you want for more information and you want to follow the event, you can go ahead and post them there and join up there, and you can join the other 243 emergency managers that have joined in that community already. Now, just really quick, what we're looking forward to coming up in the rest of our series is presentations from, of course, Finland today. And then we're going to have France, Australia, and it's got a couple of asterisks there just because I'll talk about time zones in just a second. But of course, the United Kingdom coming up, Germany, and we're going to have a future of emergency management discussion with the University of Manchester partners in around September, October. And that's going to be an extremely interesting discussion because of the fact that we are really, everybody's kind of having this conversation right now, but we want to take part of that as well and kind of get into the topics about what that means for the future emergency management coming out of the pandemic. What have we learned? Where are we going? And what's going to be next? And of course, we're going to have another presentation on. We're going to have at the towards the end of our series a smart cities presentation on the Impetus project by Harold, the president of Teams. So just about the time zones, really quick. So when we get to the Australian presentation, basically there's going to be time zone issues because and we have to cater to all the different time zones. So just be aware of that. Certainly, stay signed up for our webinars as we're moving through the series because there will be recordings. And if it's going to be very early in the morning for you, if you're in the United States or on the West Coast, for example, there's still going to be a recording. We're going to post the recording. It's going to be on the CBI website, and it's also going to be published by Teams as well. So readily available. So go ahead and just register as well. Now, getting into the introduction. So again, myself, my name is Kyle King, Managing Director of Capacity Building International. I've been here throughout the series along with Harold. And so I don't think I need too much of an introduction, but I will turn over to Harold because I think you have a few points we wanted to cover today. Harold, over to you.
Thank you, Kyle. Good, or hello, everybody. Whatever time you are on, it's very good to see that we maintain a quite high number of participants. So that's a good development. And what I like to do before we introduce the speakers today is to share the screen. All right, what I like to tell you, we have now finally decided that the annual conference this year will be, for Teams, will be 6th to 10th December in Paris. We are still unsure if this will be possible with a physical conference, but we hope so. I saw from the news yesterday that Paris restaurants and also areas were open to people that had a vaccination certificate. There is still half a year to that time, so I hope this is possible. What you see here is that The main theme of the conference will be new emergency management in the resilience area, facing health, climate, and energy challenges. These are probably the three issues we are going to talk a lot about in the future. And the call for papers is already put out. I will put out the text during the weekend. And I just wanted to show you the timing, because we will have two types of papers, academic and research papers and practitioners talk. The academic research papers will be peer-reviewed, and there is an abstract submission 30th of June, and full paper August 30th. So, and you have to deliver the final paper by November 1st. And I hope many of you actually like to participate, and you can start already now thinking about what should you submit. The whole the call for papers will be on Teams website during the weekend. We have already opened EasyChair, so if you take down this link or you search on EasyChair for Teams AC 2021, you will get in and you can already now upload your abstract. But another thing I like to share with you is we always have a 3-year horizon on venues with annual conferences of teams. And we had planned to be in South Africa in 2022. But in discussing with Roman Tanlich, who is the regional director for Africa, they think that the COVID-19 situation in South Africa and the lack of vaccination possibilities, they have asked that we can postpone it to 2023. So I have asked around, and Teams US chapter is considering hosting Teams 2022 in USA. And this is interesting because, for your information, Teams was established in May 1993 at Marriott Hotel in Washington, D.C. And that will say in 2022, we are 29 years old, not 30, but 29 probably is a better number. So what we are looking for is cooperation partners, organizations, or individuals, venue location, not decided, demonstration and visits. We know there is a lot to visit and see and demonstrate in US. So those of you who find, yes, I would like to be part of that, I like to influence this, just please contact George Markowski. You see a picture of him here. He's the president of Teams USA chapter. Easy email, Markowski, markowski@gmail.com. And we hope many of you think, yes, I would like to be part of this. And there is 1.5 year until the venue. And that was what I wanted to tell you. So back to you, Kai.
All right, thank you very much, Harold. Yeah, got to learn to unmute myself. Okay, last point from my side, and then we'll get into the introductions for our guest speakers today. We're about midpoint through our 2021 webinar series, and what we would love to do is get some feedback from you about the webinar series and what you would like to see. After the Zoom event is over, there's going to be an automatic pop-up for a quick survey. It takes about 1 minute just to fill it out to see what you think about the webinar series, and if you have any input for us about moving forward, if we're missing something, or if there's something else you'd like for us to cover, there's your opportunity to let us know. And so if you can, it's going to take maybe just a minute or two just to fill that out, and it'd be much appreciated. So it's going to happen right after we end this event, and we look forward to the results. So now I'll turn it over to our guest speakers today, who are coming from Finland, and turn it over to you for your introductions. Pertti, over to you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this is Helsinki calling. Welcome to this webinar also from our side. Tonight, we are going to introduce you to the emergency management in Finland, and the focus of our presentation will be on civil defense, especially on the Finnish national shelter program, with the purpose of keeping the citizens alive in the moment of of a disaster. But first, please let me start by introducing shortly our team, starting with Mr. Jarkko Häyrinen here. Jarkko, please.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jarkko Häyrinen. I'm a senior officer from Finland Ministry of Interior Rescue Services. I have a couple responsibilities in Ministry of Interior, for example, accident prevention, preparedness and situation awareness in rescue services investigation, and also I have responsible of civil shelter technical requirements and legislation.
Thank you, Jarkko. And then I will give the word to our industrial member of our team, Mr. Jyrki Ronkainen. Please, Jyrki.
Thank you, Pertti. And good evening, ladies and gentlemen, also from my side. My name is Jyrki Ronkainen, and I am a board member of Temet Group. But tonight I will represent Temet International, which is a part of the group and actually established in 1953. And Temet specializes in designing and manufacturing of all special components and systems for protective shelters designed to shield the shelter occupants from impacts of natural, technological, and intentional hazards. Now, Temet supplies its products to civil defense shelters and protected military facilities, petrochemical plants, offshore oil fields, and nuclear power industry. Our mission is to provide the most advanced and cost-effective solutions to shield human lives and valuable assets in all possible crisis situations. Now, we operate in all continents, and our sales spans over 30 countries around the globe through local subsidiaries and cooperation with leading integrators and distributors. Now back to Pertti.
Okay, thank you, Jyrki. So finally, my name is Pertti Woitsch. I'm the CEO of Woitsch Consulting, a Helsinki-based consulting firm. We operate on the security and defense domain, helping companies, but also research institutes and public authorities in their jobs. Okay, that's it. So let's start the show. So, as you can see, Finland has been rather successful in various international comparisons between countries. Many of my foreign friends have been wondering how is it possible for a small and remote country to achieve all these trophies? And I guess you're thinking the same. We can probably give you an answer to this question. Let me first explain you some facts that dictate the living conditions of the Finns. Firstly, we are really a very northern country. A third of the country's area lies north of the polar circle. That means we live on the same latitude with the people of Greenland, northern Canada, Alaska, and Siberia. The mentioned northern area, with only 200,000 inhabitants, is practically empty. Most of Finland's population live on the southern coast. Even the population concentrated in the southern part of Finland is not very large. We are only 5.5 million people living in this country, which is by area larger than Italy, which has some over 60 million inhabitants. But still, even in that case, so we still have to have the same infrastructure and services available in all parts of the country. As one could expect, the climate in an Arctic country is cold. The annual average temperature in Helsinki is 6 degrees centigrade, 43 Fahrenheit. And in the northern part of Finland, it's a lot colder. And as an extra bonus, we have more than 1,300 kilometers of land border with Russia, which definitely is not making our life any easier. So back to the question, how can we achieve the high positions in international comparisons? And you know, the answer is actually rather easy, because we have to. We have no other choice. If we want to build and maintain a prospering society under the conditions given to us, we just have to do our best every day in every single action, every single thing we do. There are many preconditions for successful development of a society, but one is above the others. And that you can see here. The country must be safe and secure. And this is something we Finns take very seriously, as we know what the threats are that can realize if safety and security are forgotten and neglected. So let's have a look at the safety and security model of Finland. We tried to explain this in a informal way, but obviously there is no way to avoid organization charts. The Finnish model of national security is based on the concept of comprehensive security. This model is built on the security strategy for society from 2017, a governmental resolution. The comprehensive security is a cooperation model, a framework collaborative. It's based on definition of vital functions of the society, identification of potential threats on all levels. It describes the principles of foresight and preparedness and determines various security actions. The security model is managed and implemented by the Security Committee, where all ministries and safety and security agencies are represented. And the diagram you're seeing on your screens shows the 7 vital functions that are fundamental for the preparedness of the society. Firstly, ensuring leadership is vital, as it is the basis for safeguarding all other functions. International activities cover all levels and sectors of the Finnish society, and security cooperation at EU level is an integral part of security planning in Finland. Finland will safeguard its independence and territorial integrity by maintaining a credible defense capability to repel military threats by using military force when needed. By maintaining internal security, Finland can prevent and counter criminal activities against it and its population, preventing accidents, environmental damage, and other similar incidents and threats. Ensuring the functioning of the economy, infrastructure, and security of supply helps to safeguard the funding and other resources for vital functions. Functional capacity of the population and its well-being are safeguarded by maintaining the key basic services. And finally, psychological resilience means the ability of individuals, communities, society, and the entire nation to withstand the pressures arising from crisis situations and to recover from their impacts. In this presentation, we will concentrate in internal security of the state. And I will now give the microphone to Mr. Jarkko Häyrinen from the Finnish Ministry of the Interior, so he will continue.
Thank you, Pertti. All authorities are responsible of their own side of safety and security. Safety and security on their side at the normal times and also at the disasters and the wartime. Here is the main safety and security authorities in Finland in government level. As you can see, there is Finnish government and Prime Minister's office. The Ministry of Justice is responsible of criminal sanctions agency and safety investigation authority. Our safety investigation authority is quite interesting because it is forbidden in law to use their papers in courthouse. So it's only for progress and the development of the authorities' actions. Ministry of Transport and Communications are responsible of Transport and Communication Agency for the roads and radio waves and etc. Ministry of Social Affairs and Health is responsible for radiation and nuclear safety authority. Ministry of Finance is responsible for customs, etc. Ministry of Defense, of course, is responsible of Finnish Defense Forces. And our ministry, Ministry of Interior, is responsible for internal security agencies. So there is a couple of agencies in Ministry of Interior. First, there is police. You all know what the police does and what it means, so I don't waste your time for that. So next. And then we have rescue services. That varies in a couple countries, so we focus that a little bit more in next slides. Emergency response, which means alarm centers. We have a very good system in Finland. When you call 112, you can have help from police or rescue services or health and social authorities. So it is very good system, and we were very first country to make that 112 emergency response. Then we have a border control that is also known for you, migration and crisis management. Those emergency response and crisis management are under the rescue services. So here is an approximate organization of rescue services in Finland. Ministry of the Interior Department of Rescue Services is responsible for whole country's rescue services, and we have two agencies under the Department of Rescue Services. There is an Emergency Response Center Agency and the Emergency Services Academy in Finland. It's almost middle of Finland. It's located in Kuopio. Then we have 22 rescue departments, which is owned by municipalities, and regional state administrative agencies are supervising those rescue departments. Those rescue departments have 112 full-time fire brigades and 709 voluntary fire brigades. As you can see, our rescue service system is mostly based on voluntary fire brigades. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. If there would be just one word to describe why Finland is successful, so I would say the word is cooperation. The Finnish model is built on cooperation, not only cooperation between citizens, but also between authorities. And even there is a lot of cooperation between the citizens and the authorities, which is not so typical. Cooperation, of course, allows us to maximize the outcome of any operations, minimizing the costs, human effort needed for fulfilling certain tasks. And this is especially important in maintaining safety and security, which are expensive and difficult tasks. I will now show you 5 examples of how Finland takes advantage of cooperation in the area of internal safety and security. All of these practices are maybe not so obvious, and therefore I think they could be interesting for someone coming from a larger country. Cooperation between police, customs, and border control is very close. There is a law which states that these three agencies must work together, and they really do. In a country with small population and relatively large geographical area, it is not always possible to have separate authorities available for all tasks, and therefore these three agencies are able to conduct each other's duties as possible and necessary. That means that, for instance, the police and the customs can check passports, while the border guards can investigate crimes in the border zone. The customs also have the way to investigate crimes. So this means that we don't necessarily have to send to a case three different authorities, but one can do it all. They keep a joint and proactive situational awareness picture and exchange information continuously. Another example is cooperation between the sea services in Finland. That means the Navy, the Coast Guard, and the civilian maritime agency. And this is to maintain maritime safety and security in the first hand. Also, these three agencies, they have joint maritime sensors. They have access to each other's data. They maintain a joint maritime situational awareness system, and they give mutual assistance for maritime traffic control, for emergency management, law enforcement, and environmental protection. Here you can see the Finnish Navy, a patrol ship of the Coast Guard, and freighters going in ice. The next example is cooperation between the Finnish Defense Forces and civilian authorities. The law in Finland says that the Finnish Defense Forces have three statutory tasks. So firstly, of course, military defense of Finland and EU cooperation and international crisis management. But as important task for the military is giving support to civilian authorities in areas of law enforcement, counterterrorism, rescue operations, and environmental protection. And here, I think in this picture, you can see on the left-hand side, there is a squad of infantrymen probably for the training for a counterterrorism case, and the policeman. The text in his back says situational leader. That means that the police is leading these, not maybe directly to the soldiers, but their sergeant. The next picture is, of course, an army helicopter doing search and rescue, and the third one is a ship which is owned and operated by the Navy, but its purpose is to fight against environmental protection. That means cleaning of oil spills and oil leaks. So the military is running this, but of course the experts come from the Environmental Protection Agency. One more, cooperation between civilians or say citizens and authorities. This is a good example in Finland, which is very sparsely inhabited. So we only have 112 full-time fire brigades and 4,000 full-time firefighters, but we get 13,400 voluntary firefighters and over 700 voluntary fire brigades, and especially in the northern part of the country, which is very empty. So without the voluntary firefighters, the next full-time fire brigade could be 500, 600 kilometers away, which would mean that the house probably has burned before the firefighters are there. The last example is very interesting because it's very, very actual, and that's about cooperation between citizens and government. And I'll give you some basic data first. The graphs I'm showing indicate the incidence of new COVID-19 cases in last 14 days per 100,000 people. That means that these are relative numbers and relative figures, not absolute. Let's see how it looked like in United Kingdom. It was like this. In France, the situation was almost similar, but the peak was a bit earlier. The United States looks like this. Our neighboring country, Sweden, like this. And then as a last graph, I'll show you Finland. Very low numbers. And it would be very, very nice to say that, yes, we have so much better healthcare, but that's not true. That's not true. Our healthcare is good, but our idea is that these low figures, the reason for them is that here in Finland, we do respect and obey the authorities. And when we are told to wear masks, we do. When we are told to stay home, we stay home. And so that means there is a good cooperation between the authorities and the citizens. So these 5 examples maybe give you some idea of how we try to manage and maintain a high level of safety and security in this country, despite our very small resources and low number of practitioners. Okay, let's have a look at the rescue services and civil defense in Finland a little bit. And I will again give word to Jarkko from the ministry.
Let's drill down towards the focus of the presentation. In Finland, we have divided our rescue services in 3 main services. The first one is quite obvious. It's firefighting and rescue services in accidents and so on. The next one is accident prevention, and we do fire inspections, investigations, training, safety information, social media, and so on. We focus a lot of accident prevention. There is said that there is no honor to fight a fire which could be prevented, and this is very favorite part for the rescue services for me. And then we have also preparedness, the planning of the future coming disasters, future coming accidents, small and also big ones, and also the wartime. So that's why we have the preparedness, and the most important thing there is the civil defense. So the civil defense or civil protection, I know there is almost the same thing, but in language for civil defense and civil protection, but the purpose of our civil defense is to protect the civilian population from armed conflicts and other hazards, to help the population to survive the direct effects of disaster, and to enable the civilian population to survive through the emergency. And there is a couple examples. There is, of course, there is lots of things there. There is, first thing is for alerting citizens, and it goes from normal times to the wartime. We use same alerting systems near the chemical factories to alert people for getting cover if there is chemical accident, or use same speakers for example, for airstrikes. And then we have evacuation. We go there also from small to big. When we plan evacuation, we think about evacuation at the fires from the buildings, and for bigger accidents or hazards at wartime, we plan also the evacuation of the cities. Also, we have protective shelters, which are mostly for the wartime, and that has also lots of things to do, plan to get them working. Thank you, Pertti.
Thank you. Okay, So let's have a closer look to the Finnish protective shelter program, because we think that is something that is not so known to people from most countries. It's a Finnish speciality, so to say, and it should be very interesting to people, professionals of emergency management. But let's start by looking at a very short movie.
I can hear the wail of power-diving Russian bombers over the capital of Finland. I can see the Finnish people the planes roar over. I can hear explosions of falling bombs. They're dropping close by us now. Tremendous explosions are shaking the city. The house where I'm speaking is trembling. That's how one newspaper man described the scene over the telephone. But what he didn't describe were the tears of agony and rage that the people feel when the sovereign nation they live under is attacked by brute force. The mass sorrow of a people cowering against a wall for safety from aerial death. I can hear the wail.
So this short newsreel clip is over 80 years old, and that was filmed in fall 1939 when the Soviet Union had attacked Finland. And you saw in this this clip people going down in makeshift shelters where to stay alive during the bombing. And that was also the time when the shelter program in Finland was started. Here, this picture also shows people entering a temporary shelter in Helsinki, in the center of the city, in November 1939. The Winter War started in 1939. In about half a year, it was over. There was a break of a year, and then another war against the Soviet Union started in summer 1949. And Jyrki, maybe you can tell about the legislation here of Finland, how it was developing during that time.
Yes, thank you, Pertti. Quite simply, the first Civil Defense Act 1939 was just a framework act to kind of mandate the cities and municipalities to provide shelters for people, which without any rigorous technical requirements. And those technical requirements came only after the war, and in late 50s. In 1958, the first Civil Defense Act was enacted, and that gave a much more, let's say, much more detailed descriptions of how to build these shelters. But even that, the law did not give full specifications for the protective shelters. That came only in the government decree in 1963, where the shelters should have sort of given protection levels, and also the ventilation requirements came into a picture in 1963.
Yes, as you can see the pictures on the top of the screen. So they're always the reason for development of this Finnish shelter program has always been on the political development in the world, especially, of course, in Europe. The World War ended in 1945, but the Cold War started almost immediately. In the 1950s, 1960s, the nuclear bomb tests and the proliferation of nuclear weapons led to a situation where everybody was more than a little afraid of nuclear war. And in Finland, which is situated between the Atlantic and Russia, so we were very much afraid of Finland becoming a part of the front, so that both sides would want to use, the West and the East would want to use the Finnish territory as a combat zone. So that's why the Finnish legislation was developing all the time. And the Cold War continued for several decades. We all remember the crisis of Berlin. We remember the Cuban crisis. Sometimes the Cold War turned to hot war, like in Korea and in Vietnam. Certainly,
yes. The legislation in Finland has developed in the pace of developing threat scenarios also, and now we have the most modern Rescue Act is coming from 2011, and we also built these modern shelters with new capabilities, and I guess that is the subject of the rest of the presentation here.
Yes, as the Cold War ended some 30 years ago, 40 years ago already. No, 30 years ago. 30 years ago. So everybody, or many of us, we thought that now the happy peacetime is going to last forever. But as we all know, so already after 20 years, so the international global climate got worse again, and we all remember the little green men in Ukraine and on the Crimea. So that means that the reason for the Finns to continue building the shelters is still there. So as we have talked now about the shelter, so maybe it's a good time now to introduce to what a modern hardened shelter for protection of citizens actually is. So Jyrki, will you continue from here?
Yes, Pertti, thank you. The shelter, the main function of the shelter is to isolate the shelter occupants from any of the hazards and dangers that are prevailing on the outside. So that is done by the shelter, and now we have this concept of protecting the citizens against CBRNE. These are the letters that you might be familiar with, coming from chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and explosion. These are the actual they come into that order, but in the shelter the most important feature is to protect against explosion effects, and also of course with the impacts of shrapnels and fragments. And then in the inside we have to maintain the atmosphere that is free from chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear agents. And the principle of the shelter is really quite simple as such, because we have to have two protective zones. First being the outer zone being the blast-proof zone, which is usually done by reinforced concrete structure or by excavating the shelter in the rock. That is to stop the advance of any blast or other kinetic energy effects, and also thermal effects and radiation effects. And this blast-proof zone is then, of course, kind of it would be concrete structure that an ideal concrete structure that would not have any openings for access, or any openings for services, or any openings for ventilation. But unfortunately, we have to have these services, and they will be the blast-proof feature of the walls will be kind of reinstated by installing these special components such as blast-proof doors, blast valves, and penetrations. Blast protection has to be consistent with the protection level of the whole facility. If we have a 10-bar shelter, we have to have 10-bar doors that would resist 10-bar blast pressure. Similarly, all the other services that we are taking through those thick walls. We also have we need to have secure the ventilation system, and that is done by installing blast valves that have the same protective capability as the walls they are installing. And they also must have the sufficient ventilation capacity to provide enough air into the shelter. And they have to close by the oncoming blast to block the blast from coming into the facility. Well, there was this other zone, which was the airtight zone or gas-tight area, or also toxic-free area, which has to be isolated by gas-tight equipment, such as gas-tight valves and gas-tight doors, gas-tight penetrations. And they would be necessary to provide the tightness into the shelter so that we can maintain sufficient positive pressure inside the building to block any toxic agents from seeping into the protected area. Then the shelter has to have the life-supporting or life-sustaining systems even for a longer stay in the shelter. And those are the CBR and filtration systems that purify the air from all these chemical, biological, nuclear, and radioactive either solid particles or aerosols or gases. And they also provide the necessary overpressure inside the building. And then when there is a prolonged close-up period, meaning that the shelter would be in a lock-up mode for more than 24 hours, then we usually have to have the CO2 removal system. The CO2 removal or the CO2 buildup is, of course, by the occupants of the shelter that are breathing and producing CO2. So it has to be kept at a tolerable level. And it's, as a rule of thumb, if you have more than 24-hour close-up period, you need to consider how to remove the carbon dioxide. Shelter operation modes are follow certain logic. In normal time, peacetime use, the shelter is in normal mode. Everything operates as in a normal building. The shelter doesn't differ much. The operation of the shelter doesn't differ much from normal building use. When something happens, usually the shelter is put in a close-up period. That's what I just referred to in the previous slide. And the length of the close-up period depends on the threat on the outside. If there's too much gases, too much fallout, too much pollutants, we have to keep the shelter in a relatively long close-up period. And when the threat has kind of decreased to the level that we don't saturate the filters, we can open up the filters and go into the filtration period, which in this case, of course, means that we take the polluted air from the outside, purify it, and pressurize the shelter with this specific CBRN system that we have installed in the shelter. And once the threat has completely passed, we can go back to the bypass period, which is pretty much like the normal mode, but we still use let's say the emergency time systems of the shelter. So it's not the same as a normal mode, but resembles normal mode to great extent. And once the whole situation is over, we go into the post-sheltering and maintenance period when everything is overhauled and put back into, let's say, readiness for the next crisis.
All right, thank you, Jyrki.
Right.
I hope you all now know a little bit better what the hardened protective shelter means. Jarkko will now tell us about the shelter legislation in Finland. A few words.
Thank you, Pertti. At first, I had to say that such a strategy in Finland to protect citizens must be at the same time economic. So where we do build shelters if we do that economically. We build shelters where are most populated areas, and where is most populated areas, the most populated areas is there where is the biggest buildings. So we have divided our civil shelters in 3 groups, and here is the one first. The S1 shelters are mostly built in the apartment houses, which has a floor area over 1,200 square meters, and the maximum shelter space is 135 square meters, and it has space for approximately 180 people. The pressure load on structure is designed for 100 kilopascals. The costs for all these shelters are for the builder. The government doesn't pay the costs of the civil shelters, but builder has right to have more right to build when they do when they build the civil shelters. And the civil shelters, which is made for apartment, for example, this apartment house, is only for the apartment house habitants only. And here is a little bit closer look how it looks in the Finnish multi store building, and this is for good example for S1 class shelters, which is built for 72 persons. It has filtering of breathing air. It has emergency lighting, and if there is no electricity, it can be operated by manually. Also, there is water, and if there is needed food or anything else, then it's bought by shelter occupants. And main design is that it is always the civil shelters are always in normal time use, and in the legislation it is said that it must be get to the civil shelter position in 72 hours. And then is bigger for bigger buildings, the S2 class. It is, for example, shopping centers, hospitals, hotels, and etc. When the builder wants to make at the same time bigger civil shelter, the maximum shelter space is 900 square meters, and the maximum number of people which can be used that is 1,200 people. And also the structure design for loads are double than the S1 class. It's 200 kilopascals. And here is the I'm not sure if you can see that, but it is used as a shop warehouse, and you can see there is a room for technical instruments for the shelter. Then we have large block shelters for city districts. It can be built by several buildings which buy space from the shelter, or it can be also when you make a big shopping center, there can be also at the same time done this big shelter, and mostly those are used for parking slots, etc. Maximum shelter space is 4,500 square meters, and there can be maximum people about 6,000 persons. And the pressure load is 3 times the S1 shelter is 300 kilopascals. And typically they are about 20 meters below the ground surface. And here you can see the example of rock shelter, which is under the shopping mall, and it has parking slots in it. So we have said that in Finland that we have a very great national treasure in our shelters, and it is we have about places for people, about 3,700,000 places in S1 shelters, which are those apartments, and you can see the other numbers. So when you think that we have about 5 million people, and we have built those shelters long time, so we have pretty good situation nowadays, and we think that is our national treasure. So, and for other countries, the Finnish builders has used that. It is part of the Finnish building, and also from the other countries which does civil shelters. In Finland, we do civil shelters for citizens. We don't do that for government leading or another things. We are doing to protect our citizens. Okay. As you can see, there is our civil shelter building is not wasted. You can see there a couple pictures of our civil shelters. There is a metro station, parking lot, gymnasium, swimming pool, and etc. Typical civil shelter is our warehouse.
Okay, thank you, Jarkko.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Jyrki, now this is just about almost the last slides. It's about the conclusion. So maybe you could now, as you've been working with these shelters for decades, so maybe you could draft this conclusion or draw this conclusion.
Yes. Certainly, Pertti.
What is under the line?
I can do that. Yes.
Bottom line.
I guess one of the most important things here is that this shelter program has a very, very clear and heavy support from the citizens. You can see here that in Finland we do these citizen surveys every 3 years or so, and they have indicated a very high support for continuing this program, as well as maintaining these existing shelters in good working condition. And this program, like Jarkko explained, is not funded by taxpayers' money. So the cost is falling on the owner of the building at the end, and that means that the system has sustained over the decades, and even when we thought that there will be an eternal peace. And many countries, in that case, they just dropped the program because they didn't see any reason for protecting the people anymore. But in Finland, the program is considered as a very vital part of national security, and therefore it continues. And we know that it will continue. But of course, there are also challenges to this kind of somehow controversial thing, because it's in a way it's not a positive thing to talk about threats and war and crisis. But the challenges are some of the challenges are here because it's based on legislation. It's always subject to political risk. The government changes, and they may have another view of the whole thing. And of course, there are 40 plus thousand shelters. It's a big task to keep them in working condition because they need regular maintenance and upgrading and overhaul. And the shelters, because they are used in the peacetime, they are used in warehouses for recreational and exactly as Jarkko explained, they're the converting those shelters into emergency use, emergency time use takes time, and it's big effort. And there has to be plans how to do that in a controlled manner. The politicians, decided to drop the so-called public shelters. So we don't build those shelters anymore, which are not earmarked for certain group of people, certain group of citizens. So all new shelters have a designated user. And since there is this threshold of 12,000 square meters for the requirement to build shelters, it means that it doesn't produce shelters for small houses or more small housing areas.
Good.
Okay. Finally, this week, this is just change this. This is absolutely the last slide. So we will discontinue after this. So just for your information that there are significant shelter programs in some other countries. And these countries are listed here. They are Switzerland, Sweden, Norway, Israel, Kuwait, and Singapore. And these are the only countries that have a let's say, somehow mandated and legislated requirement to build shelters. There are, of course, this same technology, as Temet uses the same technology to protect many other targets or many other objects of requiring protection, like industrial, like the industry that has threat of explosions, like refineries, nuclear power plants. There are many other industrial facilities that need, and then of course the military installations of various kinds have exactly the same requirements because the blast is the same for civilian shelters and it's the same for military facilities. And finally, this is not harmonized. The requirements for the shelters is not harmonized. It's all regulation, all laws, all specifications, requirements is national. So there is no, at the moment, there is no standard on giving any guidelines on protective shelters. But we can say here that there is a project started with an ISO shelter standard proposal, which is now under consideration. So with this, I would like to end up our presentation.
Okay, so
thank you so much.
Thank you, Jyrki. So thank you for your attention, ladies and gentlemen. I guess we exceeded our time a little bit, but I hope that this has been interesting for you. For more information, feel free to contact any of us. And of course, you might have now some questions. And so I give the word now back to Kyle and Harald. So we stop sharing here. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. We do have a number of questions, and so what I will do is I will start actually from the shelter questions, and then kind of go back from there. The first question I guess I would have is, and that actually came from the group here, and so is there any organization or department working on researching the social and psychological aspects or elements of sheltering?
There has been research the behavior of the shelters. I think that the research is about from the 70s, but nowadays there is very little research for that matter.
Okay. All right. Thanks a lot for that. Let's see. Okay, when we were talking previously and you were presenting, information about cooperation models, there's quite a few questions about cooperation. Could you go into a little bit more information about, for example, the collaboration between academia and science in Finland and how that cooperation is, and also in terms of, international cooperation in terms of disaster response? Finland is, Finland participating in, um, any, like with UN OCHA or SAR teams, things like that. Is there a lot of international cooperation going on as well?
I think that the best place to ask about research is Rescue Services Rescue Services College in Kuopio, and also we have lots of cooperation with Aalto University. So there is and there is a couple more studies going on. I don't think that we don't have time for for going through those.
Yeah,
Sure.
but there is, as Jarkko explained earlier, so there is a national rescue services or rescue academy in Eastern Finland, and they do quite a lot of research in this area.
Yeah.
So, and I guess that the Finnish authorities do have a lot of communication with their counterparts in other EU countries.
Of course.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, then from the industry side, we can say that the industry, of course, is doing both the domestic and international research into the let's say the effects of disasters, more like how the disaster will affect certain let's say structures or elements or equipment, and take that into account and design and develop the systems accordingly. So that is international, quite vivid international cooperation in that sense.
Hmm. Okay, thanks. Now, there's quite a few questions here that are along the lines of firefighting, because you had mentioned that a vast majority of the firefighters are volunteer, which is quite interesting. I think that's largely in the same in the States as well, in the U.S. So in terms of firefighters, are they paid? Is that like a national program, or is it paid sort of at what we might call a municipal or regional level, or is that something that they're paid by the individual city? And then, of course, if there's such a massive volunteer, component of the rescue service, how are those volunteer services sustained over time?
There is a couple of systems there for volunteer firefighters. Mostly they are part-time firefighters. They are when they come to duty, they will be paid. And there is also the voluntary fire brigades that fire brigade gets payment, and then they share it in voluntary fire brigade as they want. The costs are made. Costs are from the payment comes from municipalities,
Okay,
governments.
right. When we were talking about, so you were providing an overview and kind of going back to the beginning of the presentation, you were giving an overview of Finland. And of course, we noticed that, in the northern part of Finland, it's not as populous as in the southern regions and things like that. But what if you were to prioritize sort of your natural hazards in Finland? What are those? Because obviously, seeing like the vast amount of shelters might be great for Finland, but maybe not for other countries which have are more earthquake zones and things like that. So, what are the natural hazards that Finland must contend with, or as the dominant natural hazards, I guess I would say?
Natural hazards. The shiver shelters are very. It's very long thinking to think that we build civil shelters for natural disasters. Our natural disasters are mostly forest fires, storms, floods, etc.
Snow.
And of course, snow makes tricks for us. And of course, in national risk assessment. There is also the normals. We have nuclear plants and so on. So the quite normal, but we don't have earthquakes as many countries from here, from the other side of microphones.
Yeah, but the reason for the shelter program in Finland is, as we explained here, it was started when during or just before the World War, and the main purpose or the main reason why it has been continued is still the same. So the main use of these shelters is to protect people, the citizens, in case of armed attack against the country.
Yes, exactly.
Sure. So more of a national security function than a disaster response function.
But still, it is true that if, for example, we have several nuclear power plants in Finland, and of course a lot of chemical industry too. So in case a chemical plant explodes or there is a Fukushima type or something like that type accident, so the fallout of for example the radioactive material would be just about the same as in case of a maybe a little bit different compounds, but still the shelters are very useful also in that case to protect the people against this fallout.
And it also doesn't have to happen in Finland.
Yeah, it can happen in Ukraine or in Russia or maybe even in Sweden.
No, that's actually that's funny that you mentioned that. I mean, one of our questions was because of Chernobyl. How did Finland protect your people against air pollution and things like that from the Chernobyl accident? It's a tough question. I mean, that was a while ago, so
I don't think that's not a tough question. In fact, our colleague Janne Koivukoski just read his paper for doctoral dissertation a couple weeks ago. So the Chernobyl is quite good memory. In good memory, his doctoration was about this Chernobyl, but in that Chernobyl case there wasn't need in Finland to get civil shelters in use. So that is short answer for that question.
The level of radiation was low enough so that there was no need to isolate people from the environment through shelters. So, but it probably would have been done in case the level of radiation would have been higher.
Yeah. Right. And I guess one of the last questions I have, and this is coming down to more about the cost and the allocation of these shelters. I mean, that's a pretty vast shelter network within Finland, and you had stated that the cost is borne by the people that own the buildings. Correct?
That's right. That's correct.
So what is there, I mean, other than, of course, there's legislation that requires them to build a shelter. I mean, what is their incentive to do that? Are they getting tax breaks, or how are they incentivized to build a shelter? Because that seems like that would be an additional cost, which is essentially sort of just passed to the residents of the building.
The costs for residents are quite low. It's about 25 euros per square meter. Because Finnish if we talk about living compartments, because in Finnish legislation you must make a warehouse also for car tires and etc.
The basement.
At the basement, so it's quite cheap to make the walls and the floor and the roof a little bit tougher and take couple of equipments for life supports in that shelter.
Yeah, because it's by the law, so the incentive is kind of following the law. So it's as simple as that. But like Jarkko said, it's very low, 25 euros per square meter in the apartment price, or in the apartment building cost, and it has nothing to do with the actual sales price of the apartment. So it's really it's like negligible cost. But of course, it's the building industry would not like to do even that, if they could skip it. But because it's the law, then it must be built.
We, as I said earlier, so we Finns are strange people. If the government tells us to do something, so we might say that no, we don't want to do that, and that's horrible, and damn politicians. But then we just think, okay, let's do it. And I guess the main incentive for this, and that's why it is still, as Jyrki said, so 80% of the population is for this. So the main incentive is that you have a place in the shelter if something happens. So that's I think it's a good feeling to know that I have a place where I can go if things get really bad.
Yeah. It's an insurance policy in a way.
Right. I mean, that's really interesting from the aspect of, I guess it's a cultural aspect in Finland as well, right? So people grow up having the shelters, and they're accustomed to having shelters, and it becomes ingrained into their lifestyle to where people are just at ease with the idea of sheltering in place during an emergency or a security incident or anything else like that.
That's one.
So I would imagine that the public education programs is that a concerted effort, I guess I would say, by Finland authorities, that you are constantly going out, or is it pretty much just organic at this point? Like people understand that they're there and they know how to use shelters and what to do.
Oh, another thing is also that we have army to defend ourselves, but army defends army. The citizens must be defended by themselves. You cannot separate the mixed army and the citizens together, because the Geneva agreement says that you must separate the army and citizens. You can't use citizens as a shield. The army does fighting, and citizens must be shielded.
But one thing to add here is the incentive also to build shelters. As you show, some of the pictures showed underground parking lots, large parking lots, so hundreds of cars. And I guess all of us know how expensive it is to park your car in a city center. So it's a good investment, actually. So some studies show that a large shelter like that, which is used as a car park, pays or is mortgaged in about 15 years, and after that it only brings money. So
okay, interesting. So there is a bit of an economic incentive. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Having
interesting.
Very, very profitable as peacetime use for the shelter is very, very, particularly for the bigger shelters. It's very important that they are well planned. There's well planned peacetime use for the facility, which will kind of recoup the investment in, like Pertti said, in 15 years.
Okay, interesting. Well, thank you very much for the presentation. We had a number of questions. It's very interesting to see this kind of unique aspect from Finland. So thank you once again for the presentation. Everybody that's attending, if you do have any other questions, or if you have anything else that you might want to ask about, please, in the LinkedIn group, you can post the questions there as well, and we'll do our best to answer them. And of course, right after this, there's a survey. If you'll please just take a minute just to fill out that survey, let us know what you think of this webinar series for 2021. And then, of course, what you would like to see for the next few months. It'd be greatly appreciated. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. And the presentation is very interesting. And we look forward to maybe doing this again.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
very much. Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
and thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Harald, for giving us the opportunity to explain. I think this is something that was probably is not so widely known outside Finland. Thank you, and have a nice spring. Stay healthy.